Hey guys, Callum here from 3D Tomorrow. In today's video I'm going to be talking about 3D printing and what it actually is. Let's go. So, what is 3D printing? Well, 3D printing is a type of additive manufacturing, so called because it starts with nothing and uses a material to produce an end product, unlike subtractive manufacturing, which starts with a block of material and reduces it down to the same model. If you have been using search engines to try and find out what 3D printing technologies are, then you might have come across a variety of these acronyms. FDM, or Fused Deposition Modelling, is the focus of this video. Now there are a huge number of 3D printer brands. For example, we have Creality and Ultimaker, which are both FDM printer manufacturers. Stratus make a range of professional quality machines, and Formlabs handle SLA 3D printing. Another really important area in 3D printing is the software. For example, CAD software, or computer aided design, allows you to produce the end model. In this section there are loads of brands that provide software. Fusion 360 is one of my favourites. Once you have a model, you can turn over to the slicer software, which produces instructions for the 3D printer. These instructions can be understood because of the printer's firmware. Marlin and Repetier are the most common ones in this sector. A 3D printer is of course made up of multiple components, and I will discuss some of these later in the video with an example. And a printer requires material in order to produce an end product. Filament is what is used for FDM printing, and there are a wide range of materials available, each with varying properties. If you don't have a 3D printer, you can still get files made via a 3D printing service. Shapeways, 3D Hubs, and of course 3D Tomorrow are some examples. If you're stuck for ideas of models, there's a huge number available on model sharing sites such as Thingiverse, My Mini Factory, and Colts 3D. I like to think of 3D printing as a three-stage process. The first stage is file creation. Now, for a lot of people these days, file creation simply means logging on to a model sharing platform such as Thingiverse, Colts 3D, or any other one, and downloading a file. For others, it means creating your file in your favorite CAD package, as I listed. Now, step 2 is then preparing the file to be printed, which is also known as slicing your file. Now, slicing your file takes the 3D model and chops it up into layers. The 3D printer can then in turn produce each layer, and at the end you will have a 3D printed file. And now the final stage of 3D printing, and the one in which a 3D printer is involved, is printing the file, which takes the sliced 3D printable file and turns it into a three-dimensional object which you can hold and play with in real life. Now, to show you this step, I figured a 3D printer is probably the best thing to demonstrate, and I can also then show you a few of the components and things that you might hear regularly referred to. Okay, so let's talk components. This here is the Creality CR10S 3D printer. It is a very popular printer in the market at the moment because it is reasonably priced and performs very well. You also have a good sized build volume, so a lot of people like to use this printer. This 3D printer you might hear referred to as Prusa style, being that the bed moves in the Y-axis. Other 3D printers you might see on the market have a moving bed that instead moves in the Z-axis, or I have even seen some crop up where the bed is completely stationary and everything else moves up from it. And those are quite cool as well. Now, another really important part of a 3D printer, an FDM 3D printer anyway, is this hot end in here, which is encased by a hot end cooling fan and a part cooling fan on the side. The hot end ensures that the plastic is turned into molten plastic at the end, and that is what will eventually be used to produce the part. This hot end cooling fan at the top ensures that there is a control between where the plastic is molten and is going to be pushed out at the end of the nozzle, and when the plastic is cold and can be pushed normally. The part cooling fan on the side controls how quickly the plastic cools, and controlling this is really vital from everything to part detail, part strength, and also warping prevention, since some materials you can't have this on. At the side here, we have the drive gear. Now I have actually upgraded this 3D printer with a dual drive gear, and to be honest, I haven't fully made up my mind on how good this implementation of it is. It is the same one featured on the CR10S Pro. It cost around £14 from eBay, so it was pretty cheap for this sort of thing. A Bondtech drive gear similar to this would set you back £90, £100, so quite a big difference there. So I didn't have too high expectations for the quality that it would be, but it's doing okay. So yeah, so we have the hot end and the drive gear, and then everything in between, and this encompasses the extrusion system. You might hear of two extrusion systems. We have Bowden, which is what is featured here, where the drive gear is separated from the hot end by a Bowden tube. You also have direct drive gears, which is where the drive gear will be situated directly onto the hot end, and there'll be a minimal gap between them, and so it pushes straight in. There are pros and cons between these two systems, and I can go into this in the comments if anybody would like me to discuss this. So yeah, that's some of the most important features of a 3D printer described. I'm now going to do a quick demonstration of printing so you can see exactly what happens, and yeah, we'll go from there. Let's switch it on. Lovely noisy printer. And the fans, which I could replace with some silent fans, but I've never got round to it. Anyway, with an FDM printer, you need a roll of filaments. I've got here 3D Tomorrow Pro PETG, and this just needs loading in. Okay, since I'm printing with black PETG onto a black surface, that's going to be quite tricky to see, so I'm just going to whack down a bit of masking tape. However, this isn't how I would recommend printing PETG, and I will do my PETG printing setup at another date. Funnily enough, a lot of people recommend printing PETG directly onto masking tape. However, I find that if you use the heated bed, the adhesive used on the masking tape actually comes loose, and that means that the masking tape pulls away from the bed and you end up with a warped part, which we like to avoid. Once you start the print, the magic happens and the 3D printer can start work producing your file. For each layer, the slicer software will have created an effective path that the printer can trace in order to lay out plastic in the right shape. Once the first layer is completed, the 3D printer can move upwards away from the bed and then put another layer down on top. As this process repeats, you will eventually end up with a fully fledged part. So that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this video and have learned a bit about what 3D printing actually is. If you are thinking about getting into 3D printing, I couldn't recommend it enough, although it will take up a lot of your time, so be prepared. If you do get into it, you can end up using it to produce some really cool pieces. Here's some figurines I've just done for a client, and you know, I absolutely love it, so can't recommend it enough. I realise I covered quite a lot of content in this video, so if you do have any questions about the acronyms or anything, then do please put them in the comments section below. See you next time. Oh, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Cheers!